would love to dive into something that is really fundamental to the whole philosophy around this type of work that we're doing when we're working with families. And it's all oriented around regulation. And so, Heather, I would love to just pick your brain about what does regulation mean?
I'd like to pick your brain about that one too.
Let's go. Let's go.
Let's go. Let's talk about it. I think for me, regulation is such an important foundational piece, and it's becoming more and more of the conversation, regulation versus dysregulation. And for so many reasons, yes, it is so important. And we really are diving into a concept that's helping us understand nervous system states and the way that we are actually feeling when we are in the present moment and being able to bring awareness and our consciousness where we are. How am I feeling right now? Am I in a flutter? Am I overwhelmed? Am I shut down? Am I trying to get away as fast as I can?
When I get dysregulated, I can tell that my heart is starting to pound. I can feel a little panic and anxiety in me. And I know just from what we understand about how the brain works is that once you're in a dysregulated state, a part of your executive functioning that is like the logic and the planning and the structure, it diminishes so that animal in us can survive, so that we can either fight the bear or run away from the bear.
I think you brought up a really important part, which is survival. And at the basis of our regulation is our survival. If we go that step further, like, why am I anxious? Why am I dysregulated? Why do I feel like I want to climb into a hole? Underneath that, we can look at my survival as being threatened or I feel safe. And if I feel threatened, then I'm going to move into this autonomic nervous system of fight and flight. And even though people talk about fight or flight in ways of, I'm going to fight, I'm going to run away, there's so much more to it in our system because there are times like we can't fight the bear. We can't run away from the bear. We have to stay where we are. So we have this low grade anxiety. And many of us actually walk around with low grade anxiety all day long. We're in the state of fight or flight where we're hyper aware. We notice everything. We can't settle ourselves down. The focus that we're requiring to notice our environment and to be aware in our environment, it takes so much energy for us. And it only takes just a hairpin. And then all of a sudden we can shoot into this fight, yelling, I don't want to hear that anymore. Don't talk to me like that. And the defensiveness comes in so quickly because we're already on edge. And to be able to think about, why am I on edge? Why is that hairpin in me wanting to respond and react so quickly? We can take that step back and say, okay, I am feeling threatened. We do have these tendencies for survival. And when we can look into our survival and feel and understand what that feeling is of feeling threatened, we can then begin to make steps toward changing that. But when we aren't aware that those are the things that are happening, we don't comprehend that our survival is being threatened on some level because we're like, I don't have a lion chasing me. Why am I threatened? That's a great question. Really good place to get curious, to find where are we threatened and why.
Yeah. And I feel like as parents, especially, there isn't a lot that is more stressful than if my child is under stress. And that makes sense biologically that that would be the case, right? That
Yeah.
if my child is panicking, then it's like, oh no, all the bells and sirens and whistles are going off in my own system. And so what can happen is that when there's panic in one, it can spread really quickly through the entire family. And that threat may or may not be real. That threat may or may not actually be something that could harm us, but our brain may or may not know the difference. And so there is some rewiring and some working with, like, okay, is this actually something that can harm me? And if not, is there a way that I can work towards regulation so that I eventually can be that anchor in the family system that can support with co-regulation? And we'll talk more about co-regulation in a minute, but I think that your point of like examining the why is so important. Why am I panicking? Why is there this anxiety? What is being threatened? And how can I address that in myself?
Yeah, and I think it's really great that you bring up this understanding of how that works within a family and how a parent might respond to a child in dysregulation by themselves getting dysregulated. And if we can go into animal systems and biology, what a parent in nature does with their child, they're protective. They're supposed to be watching out for predators. They're supposed to be paying attention to every tiny cue of their babies. And then when their baby cries, or, if they hear wind running through the grass, or if they hear something prowling, it's an instant like, I'm up, my endorphins are high. I'm getting ready to see whether I have to move into fight or flight or not. And these are natural biological instincts within our system that we're working with to help bring consciousness to, because we don't have to worry about most of the time being harmed or something really truly threatening our life, like a car crashing into us or something like that. Those are different scenarios. But when it's just someone yelling in the home or too much noise or something like that, we can take that moment to be like, okay, what about this is creating the dysregulation in my system? I'm feeling overwhelmed. I've got too many noises going on. So, what do I need to do in this moment, knowing that my life is safe, my child's life is safe? Now, what? And to me, the next step is always take a breath. I've
Mm.
got this. I'm safe. I'm okay. And giving myself the language. I'm safe. I'm okay.
I think what you bring up is really valuable, especially for the families that we work with, because the extra layer of having to worry about your child that may not be matching up with what the expectations were. Maybe they're getting into trouble with their friends. Maybe they're not socially being accepted in the way that you would hope for them to be. So, any parent of a neurodivergent child has all of these extra points that could be even more stressful. Is my child going to be okay? And so when all of our bells and whistles are going off, that there's potential for our child to not be okay. It's really important to know that once we're out of regulation, our executive functioning is quieted down while that animal instinct comes in, that when we're making choices in that space, they're not necessarily going to be as, I would say, supportive of the long term. Fight or flight is really healthy and helpful for that short-term stress. But when we're under short-term stress all of the time, it really has wear and tear on our systems. And we can't make great decisions when we are in survival mode, not like we can when we're regulated. And so, what we really want to do is take opportunities to learn how, before we start looking at our child's behavior, before we try to fix things that are going on in the family system, what can we do to regulate our own systems? Because that, I believe, is one of the most powerful tools that we have as parents, is our ability with the tools and resources and experiences that we've had, the maturity that we have, we can be a regulation force for the others in our family system. And so when we think about regulation, I think one of the first things that we talk about is not what's the regulation of the child, but where is our regulation? Because when we're regulated, we are going to do a much better job of helping other people regulate.
Yeah, and that really goes back into our care framework that we've been talking about as well. And just connecting to ourself first. That's the first point of contact, ourself. And I don't think that that's what a lot of literature or conversation is around right now. Generally in behavior, it's fix the behavior. And when we as parents are coming into our environment and where our child is, and our child is having a tantrum or some challenging behavior, and we walk in and what we think is, I've got to fix that behavior, that's a whole different relationship than walking into a situation, feeling the overwhelm, assessing the situation, and then feeling within ourself and saying, now where am I at before I walk into this? I need to take a breath here for a second. And maybe I need to walk to the bathroom before I go address the fighting or the tantrum or the destruction, whatever is happening, so that I can come with a little more clarity into the situation. And as you've shared, also, when we're working with children with neurodivergence, with autism, and other diagnoses that tend to or can have more challenging behaviors, more intensity, those are things that can really dysregulate a parent when they walk in the room, and especially when it's time after time after time after time. It's a buildup of this anticipatory anxiety of like, how do I deal with this? How am I going to walk into this? So when my daughter was young, that was something that was really challenging for me, that I had to put to the side often, was this experience I know is already triggering me with even just the 1 second that it's happened, and getting to a place where I could just step back for a moment, recognize that my PTSD of this particular interaction was on, and being able to be conscious in that moment and make a different choice and tell my system that it's okay when I walk in to work with my child who's not being defiant necessarily. It feels like defiance, but that it's her distress, her overwhelm, her frustration, her inability, her lack of tools to know how to move through these huge emotions that she was constantly feeling. And my heart would break sometimes when I could get out of this space of feeling so dysregulated by her personally, to just feel the distress that she was carrying within herself, how much it was harmful for her, how frustrated she felt about not being able to understand all of these huge emotions that she had, and why she would blow up, and why she was spiraling, and how this was supposed to be something that she was supposed to encapsulate and embody within her system. But it was our regulation, my husband's and mine, that helped her be able to learn how to embody all of that emotion back into herself, and our patience with her. And I have to admit, we weren't always patient. It was frustrating, it was hard, it was overwhelming. But with time and practice, that was something that we were able to navigate.
Yeah. I love that you bring up the struggle with this because we talk about regulation and there's almost like this hope that someday what it looks like for us is that we're just going to be in a state of calm all the time. And I feel like that's an unrealistic expectation of ourselves and of course our children as well. But that's part of what the work is here, is to continue to keep trying because we're going to continue to find places that dysregulate us. But what we want to do and how we want to support families here with balance and behavior is to create an umbrella that allows for there to be more capacity. Like, okay, yes, this is going on, this particular struggle. Is there space? Can we make space for that so that we have the embodied capacity to hold our own regulation when things get hard? And it's never going to be perfect, but at least we can have conversations that bring language to this. And also, I hope more than anything that families hear that we see you. We've been on this journey as well, trying to figure out what can we do to best show up for our children. And regulation is a big part of that.
It's a big part of that. So we appreciate everybody dropping in today, and I hope that this is helpful. And we would love to hear any comments, thoughts, suggestions, feedback of any kind, and wish you luck on your journey.